I think it should go down in law that all small towns need an urban legend. Nothing ushers up excitement to a dull, lackluster town like a good old-fashioned ghost tale, or a monster tale, or a murder tale, etc. My quaint little town of Nahant, Massachusetts, holds around a little over 3,000 people and can get quite boring rather easily. Attractions here are scarce, unless you like breweries or going to the Nahant beach. Things are blander than a rice cake. After school, I decided to go for a walk with my friend Steffi. We headed to the lowland park to do a couple of rounds and take in the scenery. We were talking about pretty mundane things, like friends at school, classes, and those idiot teachers that we just could not stand. While strolling on the grassy lands and gossiping to no end, we came across a fellow classmate, Terrence. I didn't know him as well as I knew Steffi, but we were still fairly nice to each other. I decided to say hello and ask how he was doing. Not expecting much of a reply outside of a simple "cool," I kept walking, as did Steffi. However, he had some choice words to unleash upon us. "Honestly," he began, very confused. Steffi and I looked at each other in confusion. "Confused?" Steffi said quizzically. "About what?" I silently cursed her out. Why didn't you just continue on her way? Steffi was always too sociable for her own good. "Yeah, my friend Jacob was telling me this weird-ass story about a haunted house on Harborview Road." He began. "It's a new house too. Gray roofing, white boards, very bland looking. He told me that the folks invested tens of thousands of dollars in the place, and after 9 months they just split." Steffi and I looked at each other. We never got any ghost stories around here before. I wasn't much of a spiritualist, but hell, neither of us were. When you live in a boring place like Nahant, it was quite intriguing. We listened on. From what he told me, the couple apparently took a couple of their belongings before getting out, leaving the place newly furnished and everything. What in the fuck? I muttered to myself. Steffi simply looked at me and shrugged. "How do you know the place is furnished though?" Steffi asked. "Did Jacob go in there or something?" "That's what he told me," Terrence replied. "He said he just got back from doing some exploring. I asked if he wanted to hang out, but he just turned me down and went home. Must have been spooked by something." "Where is Harbor Road?" I mused. If anything, this sounded like a fun diversion. "Well, take Wardborough South, take a right onto Castle Way, and then a left and you should be on Harborview. I don't know the exact address though." He informed us. Steffi looked at me and smirked. "Guess I know what we're doing tonight." She started without so much as a consultation on my part. "Let's head back to the park and go." "Well, I guess I don't have anything better to do tonight." "Let's go. Thanks for the info, Terrence," I chimed. "Just be careful, man." Jake was pretty creeped out. He was paper white. He replied wearily. "It could have just been a cat or something," Steffi said. "Thanks again, Terrence. We'll be careful," she assured. And with that, we went our separate ways and loaded up into my old 2005 Ford, heading in the directions given to the White House. As we turned onto Harborview, we scanned the houses trying to pinpoint the right one. There were a few white houses, but some had lights on, some didn't. We finally found the one that we were looking for. "Are you sure that's it, Steffi?" I asked, not so sure of her tracking skills. "Look at that window," she pointed. "It's cracked pretty badly. Usually if it's a window being repaired, there's a plastic sheet over it or something." "True, but it just could have recently been cracked." "Well, there's no lights on either. It's almost nighttime and they should have some lights on. Might as well just check." "I guess we can look, but if we're caught, we're totally fucked." "As if you're not familiar with being penetrated, you ass." "Let's drive a ways down and get out down the street," she suggested. "That way we won't get caught or get a ticket." "Good idea," I remarked. I did as she instructed and we got out of the car. We walked down until we were directly across from the house. You know, it looks a lot creepier without the tinted car windows separating us from it. Normally I'd call you a pussy, but damn, you aren't kidding, Steffi remarked, straining her neck to get a good look around. The streetlights didn't provide much help. The sickly orange hue just barely lighting the slick concrete road. We crossed the street and got closer to the house. It was jarring to say the least. You know that feeling when you're told something, having it built up, and you finally seeing it, and not knowing what to expect? Yeah, that feeling. I don't quite know how to describe it, but it felt like a juxtaposition of surprise, fear, and joy. You just scratch the surface, and you want to see more. We walked closer and got up onto the porch of the old house, the wooden boards creaking under our heavy steps. The porch was railed in and very wide. The left side was barren, nothing but wood paneling and dust. And on the right was an old rocking bench, slightly creaking in the night breeze. It wasn't moving much, but the breeze wasn't strong enough to even get it to rock as it was. That's fucking creepy, I stated bluntly. What else was there to say? Yeah, no kidding, Steffi replied. She pulled open the screen door and saw a bronze knocker with an elegant design. Seemed like something you could get from Home Depot. The knocker looks new. I might as well give it a try, she said, rapping the handle against the bronze rest twice. We waited for a few moments, glancing around the neighborhood. It looked like a nice place. The houses were decently sized and they were spaced apart reasonably. The lights were god-awful though. It gave just enough light to help passerbys along their way. Welp, I guess nobody's home, I said. Steffi reached for the matching bronze handle and twisted it. The handle gave no resistance and activated the mechanism. The door creaked open slightly. Steffi and I looked at each other, apprehension in our eyes. But that fear was overpowered by excitement. Finally something interesting to do in this humdrum little town, and we would be damned to an eternity in hell if we passed this up. And this turned out to be one of the most ironic thoughts I'd ever had. We opened the portal further and peeked inside. I'll go first, I said, stepping through the portal into the abandoned home. The thick rubber sole of my shoe met with the cold pavement, causing a clack to sound out through the house. I looked down and my eyes adjusted to the darkness. It was a hexagonal black and white design, with bigger shapes being joined together by a smaller one, like a demented flower. I looked around and it was a hallway. The walls were coated in a light film of dirt. I began to see better, and I saw fingerprints embedded in the dirt. What the? I sighed, horrified. What? What is it? Steffi asked in a panic, coming in after me and closing the door softly. There's fingerprints here. I began hyperventilating. I was freaking out. Dude, just calm down, she began. Remember what Terrence had told us? His friend Jack, or whatever his name was, came in here. He probably just used the wall to feel his way around. I thought about it and I realized that she was right. I took in deep breaths and let my heart rate return to normal. Thanks for that, I said, giving her a meek thumbs up. I swear you'd be lost without me, she said with her hands on her hips. Let's keep going. We continued down the hallway and stumbled into the kitchen. I pulled out my phone and I used the flashlight function to see around. It wasn't the best, but on short notice it would do. The place looked like something out of a furniture store display. A dusty but new coffee maker resting on the granite countertop. The cupboards had a smooth wooden finish, and the fridge was a grand white with a water and ice dispenser. The sink was metallic with not a drop of water staining the surface. Terrence wasn't joking when he had relayed the story, that's for sure. The place looked like it was ready to be sold, minus the smell of rotting food and dust coating everything. Steffi coughed and looked around. On the other side of the counter was the dining and the living room, joined together by a wooden arc. It was moderately spacious, nothing too magnificent. On the opposite wall, next to the fridge, was another hallway. Seeing as how we had just came out of a hallway, and an irrational panic attack for that matter, we decided to save that one for later. We began to investigate the home by entering the dining room. The table had been set with a fine china, an elegant flower design emblazoned upon it. The utensils seemed to be made out of silver, or a cheap imitation of said material. The napkins were a thick cloth and the placemats were made out of leather with a leaf design stitched into it. There was a vase of rotted roses, amaryllis and daffodil plants in the center of the oak table, its legs crafted in elegant shapes. Around the table were oak chairs with velvet pillows resting on them, and to the right of the table was a window facing the street. On the windowsill were pots of plants, all dead. Having mentioned that, there was a strong plant theme going on for the dining room, as there were various flowers, all dead due to neglect and the passing of time littering it. I guess these guys really dig plants, I whispered to Steffi, giving her an aside glance to the rotting carcasses of the greenery. Must have had more than just a green thumb. She winked, making a double entendre. I chuckled and we proceeded to the living room. The expenditure of this place was generous to say the least. A TV was positioned on the opposite side of the room, kitty-corner to the door. It was a plasma screen that stretched at least 6 feet. It was cocooned in a marvelous entertainment center, made out of an oak wood painted in the darkest black you could ever imagine, with silver handles protruding spaciously in random places, obviously where the cupboards and shelves went. Next to it was a fireplace, which upon closer inspection had soot upon it. Along with it was a giant marble angel, beautifully crafted playing the harp. On the opposite wall were 2 red polyester chairs, with a coffee table resting in between them. On the lower shelf of the table were some magazines dedicated to life's various activities. A wide couch rested against the wall of the oak arch. The black fabric stood out like a sore thumb against the white walls, slowly peeling away. On the paper white wall was a tapestry with angels sewn in, but it was ripped at the seams, as if somebody had yanked on it or tore it apart. Steffi and I both looked at each other, noting how odd this was. We looked down to make sure there was nothing to trip on. The Berber carpeting had only a white rug on it. Sewn into the rug was reflective golden string, giving off a sort of religious vibe, just to match the rest of the room. I angled my flashlight a bit to look further down on the rug, only to notice a stain on it. It was grayed, but it was definitely there. Pieces of shit weren't careful with their drinks, Steffi joked. Apparently, that stain is huge, I replied. I did a once-over of the room again, and I saw something that I had missed the first time when I looked at the couch. It too was stained. It was stained in what looked like blood and feces. I pointed this out to Steffi, gagging, who followed my lead. That's nasty, she gagged. Why is there all this blood? I don't know, but it's only on the couch though. Nowhere else, I observed. I felt like I was playing a watered-down version of Sherlock Holmes, but it was a noteworthy observation. The couch and the floor near it were stained in blood, but everywhere else was stain-free. The smell still made us gag though, but we were big lids, we'd be fine. Wait, do you smell that? Steffi asked, distracted by something else. No, I'm too busy admiring the shit and blood. I snapped back. No, it's not that. It smells like a cadaver, she whispered. When she mentioned it, I went back into the kitchen to smell for it. And sure enough, she was right. It was faint, but death was definitely embedded in this house. What should we do? Steffi asked, a nervous tone dripping from her lips. Let's investigate it, I said. If we see a body, we make a break for it and call the police while we drive off. Come on, Steffi said, obviously apprehensive about playing a game of detective. Do you really think that's a good idea? Why don't we just leave and call them? If we do that, we'll get arrested and charged for pranks, and possibly trespassing if they do a deep enough investigation. You really feel like paying a fine? I asked harshly. Steffi glared at me for being such a dick and responded, Okay, asshole, I see your point. Let's just look quick, alright? Let's try to sniff it out. she said, shaking. I agreed and I apologized for being so rash with her. She accepted and we started our hunt. We took the second hallway from the kitchen we had abandoned before. Entering it revealed, we could see doors dotted at random intervals before stopping at a window. I guess this was a pretty small house. We turned and took the first door on our right and entered a bathroom. Nothing too fancy. A drawn shower curtain revealed a porcelain bathtub and shower combo, and next to it was a porcelain toilet. And you guessed it, a porcelain sink. Everything in here was porcelain. God damn, these guys must have been the most pretentious decorators ever. Each room has some sort of theme to it. This is a house, not a museum, I commented. I don't know if it was the nerves or what, but I felt like I needed to make light of something. Steffi agreed with that and we left. And the next room was on the left side of the hallway. We entered it and found an office. The office was probably the most normal looking room of the bunch. It had a mahogany floor with Brunswick green walls. The desk was made of maple wood, a common choice, and tucked in the legroom was a standard blue swivel chair. There were shelves of books to the left, some on the floor in a pile. On the wall was a single window facing the street. The only other noteworthy thing were the photographs. We saw a young couple in the middle of the photos, and framing them were either other pictures of them, or one of them with what I assumed to be their family members. The man and the woman in the center photo were nothing too remarkable. Long blonde hair on the woman and short black hair on the man. She wore a white button-up blouse and he a black button-up shirt. She was caressing her husband's hands, which were clasped in her stomach. They each had a smile on their face, and a stare that could peer into even the deepest of souls. Offsetting them was a plain covered in snow, and a dark, stormy sky. Jesus, even their pictures were artsy. Steffi made a gagging sound with her hand, not letting the situation darken more than it already had. We then left the room behind and ventured into the next room. Jesus Christ. The words trickled up my throat and just barely left my mouth. Steffi didn't respond. I assumed it was loud enough for her to hear too. I turned to her and I saw a horrific look on her face. The room was torn apart, ransacked from the look of it, almost as if somebody was looking for something. From what we could gather, this was the master bedroom. And clothes were thrown recklessly all over the place. Dresses, suits, and tops were scattered across the room. The bed's quilt was savagely dug into, cotton sprawled out all over the bed. The spectacular oak frame was splintered and crushed as the mattress was sunken into it. The pillows weren't even on the bed. They were tossed askew all over the room. The carpeting was torn up, showing spots off the bare floor, and the closet door was ripped off its hinges, lying on the floor, and it too splintered. Sewn on the wall were thousands of scratch marks. Some scratches tore up the paint, and others painted the wall with blood. Whoever did this had their fingers worn to the bone. Furniture was toppled over, and a television was broken, lying on the floor like a murder victim. In comparison to the living room, this place looked like hell. Sure, the blood in the other room was jarring, but this was terrifying. Steffi began to panic. "We need to leave right now," she said, tugging me back. I turned and I grabbed her by the shoulder. "There's one more room. We'll look in and then we'll leave," I said, stern in my demeanor. "The room is fucking ransacked. That's proof enough, let's go," she yelled, but I didn't budge. "Fine, we'll look in there and indulge your sick curiosity, and then we are gone." She was obviously angry. I couldn't blame her, but we were too deep into this. We had to see for ourselves what had caused this, if we could manage to find them. I nodded and we left the room behind us. We stood in the hallway and stared at the final door. Steffi held onto my shoulder in fear, and I held onto hers. We were both terrified out of our wits. Who wouldn't be? But we had to find out what was behind that door, just for peace of mind at the very least. I slowly grabbed onto the handle. When I held onto it, it felt mirrory. I would have reacted in disgust, but I was far too horrified to even give a damn. or identify what it was. I turned the knob. The familiar clicking sound echoed throughout the house, and it rang in my ears. I slowly opened the wooden plank, Steffi gripping onto me tighter than she ever did before. The door was finally opened, and when we saw what the room's contents held, it was a disgusting place. The floor was stained in some type of liquid, water, blood, I couldn't be too sure. The floor was wooden, but a divergence from the other rooms. It looked to have been occupied. The walls were stained. I knew this because the wall was a light blue, and what was mixed in was definitely blood, feces, and various liquids that I was too shy to identify. On the far end of the room were decomposing bodies. From what I could tell, it was an old woman, and 2 middle-aged police officers, and a man in a blood-stained white apron. And their skin was haphazardly ripped off of their bones, and others would appear to be gnawed off. Steffi vomited on her feet, but we didn't care. The sight was far too gory to even acknowledge what she did. And then we heard it. A soft clicking noise. It might have been our ears playing tricks, but for a moment, we heard it. In 1 second, and then it stopped. We halted our deep breaths and we listened. In this hyper-focused tension, we finally noticed the structure and various things surrounding us. Stuffed animals and toys were ripped up and are broken. They were surrounding a crib. This was a freaking nursery. We saw more toys inside of the crib, also torn up and ripped apart. Stuffed teddy bears, clowns, and generic things like that were all of a sudden transformed into terrifying abominations from the deepest pits of hell. Steffi and I were going borderline mad. We were about to turn out and make our dash for the hallway when we were met with a horrifying noise. The crib creaked, and from under the toys, a mass rose up. The crib creaked with each movement that the mass had made. I moved the beam of light I had over towards it hesitantly, not sure if I wanted to see it further. I focused it and was able to see what it was. Its body was small and malnourished. The skin pale blue and seemed to be melting off, revealing its bones, coated lightly with its blood. Its yellow rotting teeth were bare and came to a razor-sharp point. The eyes were sunken in. The irises seemed to be black, but it could have just been the lack of light making brown appear black. I'm not really sure. Its nails were worn down and the tips of its bones were showing. A guttural inhalation came from it. Mama. It growled almost innocently, tilting its head towards Steffi. She dug her fingers into my shoulder, holding on for dear life. Daddy? It growled once again, and this time tilting its head towards me. I locked eyes with the horrendous creature. For a few moments, silence filled the room, before the creature sliced it open. You back, it said. A wide-toothy ear-to-ear grin appeared on its deformed, gleeful face. It then let out a scream. At least it sounded like one. It was hoarse and blood-curdling, but sounded nothing like a normal scream. It left its crib and it darted at us, crawling on all fours in a crippled and malformed manner. Go! I yelled, dragging a stupefied Steffi with me. The jolt knocked her from her stupor and she followed suit in front of me, taking a sharp right towards the hallway that led to our salvation. She reached for the handle and tried to open it, but it was jammed. I didn't know and I couldn't stop as I came slamming into her, opening the door from the impact. We collapsed onto the porch. I quickly got up and ran, looking back to make sure Steffi got up as well. I stopped and turned and saw that she hadn't. As she was on her feet, I saw the creature coming right behind her. As soon as she lifted her foot off of the creaking wood, it dug its nails into her leg, causing her to scream. Disregarding her pain, I yanked her as hard as I could from the grip. Blood sprayed everywhere as chunks of her skin left her body. She wailed in pain, but as long as she was still alive, that is all that mattered. I ran carrying her. Her screams of protest was muffled by my sheer determination to leave. I looked back and I saw the thing sitting in the doorway, screaming at me. It was the only thing that pierced my eardrums. I gritted my teeth in pain as I continued to run. The car was just on the road, but it felt like a marathon. I opened the door and I threw Steffi inside. I ran around and got to my side looking at the house. The thing wasn't chasing us. That didn't stop my paranoia or tenacity, however. As I boarded the car, I turned it on and slammed my foot on the gas. We sped away from Harborview Road. I didn't look back. I drove aimlessly, ignoring the lights and forgetting the most basic rules of the road. Fuck the turning signals. Forget the signs. I needed to get Steffi and me away from that freaking abomination. I soon came to a stop. I didn't know where it was, but to hell with it. I was away from that godforsaken home. And I was perfectly okay with that. I sucked in as much air as I could. When I finally came back to reality, I noticed something. Aside from my breath, there was no sound. None at all. I turned to Steffi. She was completely silent, looking at the windshield with a blank look in her eyes. I figured that she must have been terrified from the events that transpired. I was about to apologize for my actions, but then things started to blur. I can't remember if I did or not, but the next thing that I knew, I was blacking out. And the next thing I saw was my bedroom ceiling. I was in my bed, the familiar red quote covering my nude body. It took a while to register, but when it did, I just assumed that I wanted to get out of those clothes. I was probably just too exhausted to get ready, but I didn't want my clothes on. I wish I knew, but again, my memory was hazy. I then remembered what had happened before my blackout. Mortified, I used my cell phone and I called Steffi's house. After a few intense moments of ringing, the phone was finally picked up by Steffi's mom. I asked frantically if Steffi was alright. She was taken aback and told me that she was fine. A little sick, but okay. Now I was the one taken aback. I questioned her about the wound on her leg, but she said that I had never mentioned a wound on her leg, nor did she even have one. I was dumbfounded. I may have blacked out in my car, but everything else I remembered clear as freaking day. I asked her if I could speak to Steffi. It took some prying, but she agreed to it eventually. After hearing the muffled sounds of her actions, I finally got Steffi on the phone. "Hello?" she said weakly. She sounded awful, like she had a flu or something. "Steffi, thank God. Are you alright?" I asked, agitated by the stress of the past hours. Kinda. I feel like shit, really," she said, going into a slight coughing fit. "You remember what happened last night, right?" I pried. There were a few moments of silence before I finally got an answer. "Yeah," she replied. "My leg still aches, but there's nothing there." I was left in a stupor of confusion. Had any of that actually happened? It had to have happened. I mean, we both remember it as clear as day. There had to be an explanation for all this, there just had to. "Hello?" she asked, yanking me back into reality once more. "Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm just tired," I had said. "I'm gonna go back to bed. You should get some rest too." "I will," she said, coughing again. "Goodbye, Steffi," I muttered groggily. "Wait," she said. "Yeah, what is it?" I asked, feeling a bit impatient. More silence was heard before she said something that sent a chill down my spine. "I feel sick." The phone clicked and a dial tone rang, knocking against my skull. I gripped the phone for what seemed like an eternity before I set it back down on the receiver. I slowly crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over my body. That last sentence rolling around in my head as my consciousness slipped away from me.